The one thing that really helps me survive life, survive the ups and downs so that I can get through another day, is the fact that people do not know what they're doing at any time during their life. Everyone really is in survival mode, and I feel like in a PhD that is no different. Doing a PhD means sort of taking each day as it comes, each grant application as it comes, each little tiny result, little tiny experiment, little tiny bit of investigation, one day at a time, and just staying around and doing what you can do to make sure you're going to stay in the game for the long run. Now, take your supervisor. Your supervisor is the product of privilege, good education, a lot of luck, and clearly a lot of hard work. But that doesn't mean that there aren't a load of other people who did all of that but missed out on the luck factor. And we can unfortunately look at those people in some sort of like survivor bias and be like, oh, they know what they're doing. And the more that I kind of like spoke to researchers and spoke to academics, the more I realized that if they tell you they know what they're doing, they are lying. And if you really scratch below the surface, no one, even your supervisor, is confident with what will happen in the future. And so everyone is just scrambling to survive. And that really helps me when I kind of position my own kind of journey in the academic world and realize that, yeah, everyone is in the same boat. It's just that in academia, some people get promoted to the top and those people then go, ah, I am the answer. And if you tell them that in fact they're the product of, yes, hard work, but a lot of luck and privilege, they get very offended. I did it a few times in a tea room and it was like, ah, how dare you? Like, I've earned this. Absolutely, you've earned it. You've worked hard, but you cannot ignore the fact there is a lot of luck which gets you to the top of the academic game. And ultimately, to be in the game means that you can win it. So surviving through your PhD just means really, how can you make the appropriate choices so that you're in it to win it? You know, the moment that you just give up, the moment that you just can't weather the ups and downs of a PhD, that is when you can no longer be around to actually do your PhD. So in this video, we're going to go through the ultimate PhD survival guide, how to get through the 3 years, all of the tips and tricks that I've learned along the way, and in also building up businesses. I think they are so applicable to doing a PhD and the journey in academia. So here they are. This video is brought to you by my newsletter. Go check it out at andrewstapleton.com.au/newsletter. I'll put a link in the description. But essentially that very occasional newsletter contains more information, and the people on that newsletter list are going to be the first to find out about my really exciting, at least I'm excited, project which combines sort of PhD advice, tools and tricks all into one, and a community, I hope, all into one bundle. So find out about that project in that newsletter. So go sign up and you'll be the first to find out about it. One of the biggest things about doing a PhD is making sure that you stay on track. There is a ton of noise throughout your PhD. Noise in your own head, as in, well, I'm comparing myself to this person and, oh, that person seems to be doing better than me, and should I go to this conference? Is there money to go to a conference? Oh my God, I'm sad. What am I doing? And also external noise, people asking you for stuff. Can you run my experiment for me? Can you do this? Do you want your name on a paper? Ooh, don't we love that one? The carrot that's dangled before a hopeful academic in their sort of emerging career. You just have to make sure that you can ride that noise and actually pick the appropriate things to do, because if you run into this kind of survivor mode, you'll just end up trying to do everything and not achieving your PhD. Sometimes as well, I have known in the science field, academics get PhD students to run instruments for them because it's cheaper than buying an instrument technician to run it. So that is some aspects of doing a PhD where your supervisor may not actually want you to get a PhD, but it's a financial decision, an economic reason why you're there. So you have to be the main driver to stay on track. Firstly, you set goals. Now go check out my other videos. I've got tons of them on the perfect PhD day, the complete PhD roadmap. Like, all of these things are so important, but setting goals and making sure that you can say no to other opportunities that don't align with getting to those goals. If you're a PhD student, ultimately you need to generate original information and generate original research, and then you communicate that via conference, via papers, and ultimately via a thesis. So if a load of your activities, if more and more of your activities do not align with those two things, generating research and communicating it via conferences, publications, or your thesis, you should say no to more things. We don't like to say no. We like to be people pleasers. And in the early stages of a PhD, you're not quite sure whether you can say no. You can. You just have to realize that, there's a little bit of give and take with all these things. You can help some people, but ultimately you need to stay on track, stay focused on your goal of completing your PhD, and say no if you are finding you're doing more things that aren't related to those two things, getting research and communicating it. If that is not the primary thrust of your day, reconsider and start saying no to stuff. So stay on track. Rise above the noise. That's what you need to do to stay through and survive your PhD. And it gets easier as you go along. Initially saying no can be awkward. And in the early days, you're like, sure, I've got tons of time to do this PhD. Sure, I'll help you with your research and I'll run this instrument and I'll do that thing you want me to do, oh God, supervisor. But say no. Say no to more things. Focus on what you need to achieve to get your PhD. The sooner you can do that, the easier it is to build up momentum. Yes. This is one I find really difficult even today, and that is you need to protect your ability to work as much as you protect your work, your doing time. So I always sort of end up in this weird struggle, this weird internal wrestling match in my mind where I'm like, right, I need to get this thing done. I need to get this group of things done. I'm just going to do them. And the problem is, if you just do and do and do, you end up with burnout. And I see it a lot with PhD students, is they just end up then giving up. So surviving through means being able to know when you need to give up doing work and you need to protect your capacity to do that work, i.e. look after yourself. However that looks for you. It may be walking in nature, it may be going and spending some time with non-academic people in a non-academic community. Maybe you're religious, maybe you need to reconnect spiritually to whatever thing you believe in, and that's absolutely okay. And I still, to this day, feel like on the weekends, I'm like, okay, I need to get these things done, I'll just do them. And then you think, no, because if I relax this weekend, on Monday, I'm going to be much more efficient. And it always works out that way. You got to be a little bit hard on yourself, I feel. So I've read a lot of books around this, and it seems to me that everyone goes through a little bit of a struggle where they push and push and they do more and more and more. But then I think everyone settles back. So if you're not sure where your limit is, just push a little bit, work a little bit, do a little bit more. And then if you feel like, hang on, that hour that I just spent, I reckon would have been more beneficial for me to look after myself so that then when I go back to that work, I'm refreshed. And that's what I feel like every weekend, even though I'm dying to do work because I love what I do at the moment, on Mondays when I get back into it, I'm off because I've stood back from what I need to be doing, the mountain of work that I've set for myself. So protect your ability to work as much as you protect the work itself. And I hope that makes sense. So look after yourself and often think to yourself, now if I spend an hour doing work, is that going to be more beneficial than spending an hour looking after myself so that when I get back into it, I can do a better job? That's where burnout comes from. And so looking after yourself, meditating, whatever it means to you, and that's completely individual. So don't, look at YouTube videos and be like, oh, well, I could try meditation, I could try walking, I could try a new hobby, I could go to Meetup and find a common interest group. You can use that to kind of mold what your downtime looks like, but really you know what energizes you. For me, it's getting out with friends, speaking, having a good time. Non-academic conversations were very important during my PhD. And samba, Brazilian percussion, that was a community that no one cared about a PhD, no one cared about publications, no one cared about what I did. And that community, I think, saved me a number of times throughout my academic journey and career. So there we are. Protect your capacity to work. Your student-supervisor relationship is the number one thing that will ultimately determine your success throughout your PhD. Now, you have to not necessarily be friends with your supervisor, but you do have to respect them and you do have to be humble and accept criticism from them throughout your PhD. And they are there, hopefully, to help you grow as an academic. Unfortunately, a number of egocentric supervisors forget that and they think you are there to further their career. I've heard some absolutely devastating things from supervisors about PhD students. For example, oh, we can get a couple of PhD students and work them to death, I think was one of the phrases that I heard. That's just not on. So, your PhD supervisor relationship needs to be nurtured like every other relationship that you have in your life. So, start, as friendly as possible, but obviously respect that they are a supervisor, and so allow them to guide your PhD early on. Allow yourself to be kind of taken along, ask them for advice. That's what they really like. And one thing I found was really useful was to build that relationship is I actually would talk to them about non-PhD related stuff a lot of the time. If we were waiting for a co-supervisor to turn up, I'd be like, how's your day? What hobbies have you got? That sounds interesting. Tell me about that. They love talking about themselves, like everyone likes talking about themselves. And that relationship, I think, is about growing not only kind of a professional academic relationship, but being friendly, but not necessarily friends. And that's an important distinction to make. So the student-supervisor relationship, grow it. Remember your place in it. You can be friends, but don't try to fight it. You're kind of, an apprentice, if you will, of the academic world. And one thing I would say, one thing that is very important that I don't hear enough people talking about is the fact that their career advice is typically outdated. Now, this came to light to me in a comment recently on one of my videos, and I think this is very important that has been missed, is that a lot of people in permanent academic positions now feel like if you did what they did, you'll get an academic position. There's this kind of rhetoric like, oh, well, your time will come. Keep working hard and you'll reach the lofty heights of academia and you'll be able to sit in your ivory tower and look down on everyone. That is no longer the case. That is absolutely no longer the case. So I guess my point is, don't listen to these people for career advice as much as they want to give it, because remember that they have a vested interest in keeping you in their little bubble, in their cavern of academic activity. And so they have a vested interest in you creating papers which they can get their filthy little mitts on, to get their name on, which means that you help their academic career as much as you're helping your own. Now that's the system, don't fight it, but remember that you staying around is what they're going to want, especially if you're a good enough PhD student or a good enough academic postdoc. All of those things they love, and so they will be like, well, stay around, apply for this grant, do this, I've got this little bit of money. They want you around because they're not the people doing the research at the end of the day. It's the PhD students and the postdocs and the academics underneath them that are generating the unique and novel, interesting ideas, and they just stamp their name on it. Oh, another awesome day in the PhD world. Oh, I've worked so hard. Now, ultimately, all you have to do is do whatever you can do to weather the ups and the downs. Now, the one thing that really helps me is thinking long term. Now, a PhD, you feel like starts here and you go, boop, boop, doop, boop, doop, doop, doop. Oh, I got a PhD. That is not what happens. It is up and down and up and down, and like a whole 2 weeks where nothing works, and then all of a sudden this thing works. You've got to stay inquisitive, and it's very hard to be curious and playful and fun when things are just falling apart around you. It could be your student-supervisor relationship is falling down, or even in your own life. Maybe you're struggling financially, maybe your friends don't understand what you're doing, maybe you're lonely, maybe you're burnt out. And, no single YouTube video or no single action will really help you. It is about understanding that there are going to be ups and downs, and you have to just do whatever you can do in a healthy and non-destructive way, i.e. don't turn to loads of drinks and drugs to get through a downtime, to just stay in the PhD game, stay around, stay focused, and some days are gonna suck. I absolutely guarantee you, some days in your PhD just absolutely are rubbish. And I have left actually in the middle of the day and gone, I am done for today. I have ruined that experiment, my 3-day experiment. I've just ruined. I've spilled something in the lab. I've just argued with someone. I am off. I'm not as volatile as I used to be, I don't think. But it's okay to be sad and be upset, and give that feeling a little bit of time, at the front, and that's absolutely okay. It's not about being robots and academic robots and, working yourself to the bone for the sake of another paper. It really is about surviving. This is a PhD survival guide. You really do have to just be around for the end point. So do what you can do to weather the ups and downs, and sometimes that's going to be rubbish, and sometimes it's not going to work, and sometimes you're going to feel rubbish, and you'll walk in nature, I don't know, it rained on you and you stood in some kangaroo poo or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. You do have to understand that surviving a PhD is tricky, is tough. There's peaks, there's troughs. And the one thing is that no feeling lasts forever. Some feelings can last a very long time, some negative feelings. And if you suffer from sort of clinical depression, that's a whole different ballgame. You need to get professional advice around that. But for me, the mean is here, and I fluctuate up and down, and some days it goes down and some days it goes up. But ultimately, after a couple of days, I find that I'm getting myself out of a rut, or I can finally focus on that one thing. And there are so many layers of complexity on what is going on in individual people's minds that really, it could be personal, professional, financial, aspirational. All of these things are really challenging, and they compound and they compact and they mix and they intertwine, and it's like two snakes having sex. They're just kind of like all over each other and completely wrapped up. And just making sure that you look after yourself, that you give yourself breaks when you need to, and understanding that ultimately, like I said, no one knows what they're doing. Even the professor who thinks they do and is like, I've got this all sorted out, they don't. They're also incredibly scared about the next funding agreement. They're also incredibly scared about not meeting what the university expects of them in terms of their publishing. So yeah, survival guide. There is going to be ups and downs. Look after yourself. Do what you have to do to stay around for the long run, even if in the short term that means taking a little bit of time off. You know, take a weekend to yourself if you can. And I know in some hyper competitive labs that taking time off is a no-no. You know, Sunday morning, Saturday morning lab meetings, what a nightmare. Skip it. Sometimes, you know, skip it. If you need to look after yourself, do it. Accept the consequences, because ultimately this is about surviving. And I think overall, it can be very, very rewarding to get a PhD. And people like me, people that are looking at it retrospectively, don't always remember the ups and downs and the feelings as well, because time has numbed them from our minds. And yeah, stay in there. You got this. It's tricky and it's sometimes very complicated, but your journey is your journey, and do whatever you have to do to weather the ups and downs so you are around for the long term. So there we have it. That was the ultimate survival guide for a PhD. Let me know in the comments what you would add to that. Remember to sign up to the newsletter. Give this video a thumbs up if it was useful, and I shall see you in the next video. Remember to look after yourself.